Almost every American schoolchild can tell you that Thomas Jefferson was the author of some of the most famous words in this country. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When we talk about Thomas Jefferson's legacy, most Americans would say he's responsible for the Declaration of Independence, or that he was a diplomat in Paris, and some would even say that he was the third president of the United States. In most American schoolchildren's minds, that is the legacy of Thomas Jefferson. But there's so much more to his legacy that oftentimes it's not taught, or it's just simply breezed over. And one of those parts of his legacy is his thoughts on slavery. Slavery was quite a controversial issue, as we all know, and for Jefferson it was controversial as well. Unlike most people of his time, Jefferson did not believe in slavery. He actually was an abolitionist, and for most of his life pushed to get slavery abolished. In Jefferson's mind, slavery deprived all people of the unalienable right of liberty. In 1785, he actually made a push to have a gradual emancipation of slaves. So what that meant was that over time, slowly but surely, more and more slaves would be emancipated, and in his mind, the slaves would be sent back to Africa or the islands of the Caribbean, mostly because he also believed that the slaves were inferior to white and that there needed to be two separate nations, one for the whites and one for the freed slaves. So even though he did push for abolition, his thoughts on it were not quite perfect. In his home state of Virginia, Jefferson actually pushed for a law that would stop slaves from being imported into the colony, and he did that in 1778. And as he was pushing for the end of the slave trade in Virginia, the slave trade grew stronger and stronger. He also tried to get farmers to switch from cash crops like tobacco over to things that would be less dependent upon slaves. But again, as he did all this, slave trade just grew stronger and stronger. In 1784, he proposed that there be a ban on slaves in the newly acquired area of the Northwest Territory. And after so many failed attempts at trying to push his ideas and agenda on people, he just became silent around 1785. Now, while Jefferson was an abolitionist, he didn't believe in slavery, and in his words, he called slavery a moral depravity. His legacy on slavery is somewhat tarnished because he was also a slaveholder. He had about 600 slaves at his home, Monticello, and there's rumors that he fathered about 6 children with one of his slaves named Sally Hemings. And this rumor was started around 1802. It's been carried throughout the years. Jefferson himself never really commented on it. He tended to ignore it, but his children maintained that the rumor was false. In 1998, a DNA test was done, and it concluded that a male Jefferson was the father of Sally Hemings' children. And the issue is that there's 25 male Jeffersons in that time period. Several of them visited Monticello, so it wasn't necessarily Jefferson, but they did conclude that Jefferson was the father. And another finding, they said that Sally Hemings was only a minor figure in Jefferson's life, that he was not the father of these children. So the jury's still out, but just having that rumor and the fact that he was a slave owner did tarnish his reputation. But again, Jefferson's legacy is that he helped establish this country, was the president, and also pushed for the abolition of slavery.